What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to VeVe Investments. I appreciate you tuning in. On today's episode, we're traveling a little bit back in time here. We're going back to 2022 DCON, the live stage. It's an interview that I actually missed, and it's been resurfacing in the community, so I thought I'd recap it for those who are in the same boat. If you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy. So I believe this video is from DCON Anaheim. It's the same DCON where they did the VeVe unveil. So I believe that just overshadowed everything that week, and I completely missed this interview. So there's actually a lot of good points discussed. And one thing I really want to highlight here before we get into it is I want to point out how good the interviewer actually is. So that was another thing that stood out to me here. Interviews are typically only as good as the person asking the questions. And in this case, the person asking the questions was damn good. So because of that, I tried to include a lot more clips in today's episode. It does jump a lot between clips and then me talking. So with that being said, let's hop right into it.
So I was trying to explain to people what it's like doing a panel with VeVe, because we did one last year. I'm like, it's got that .com energy, but the people don't suck. You know what I mean? It's like people that are excited about making money, collecting, but also excited about art. And I've been putting up daily vlogs, and the first ones had nothing to do with VeVe, and the comments were like, VeVe! It's like almost like Viva Revolution, man. There were a lot of people when you guys first started doing this that kind of gave you a little bit of shit because it was a controlled environment. VeVe exists inside of VeVe. But to those people, I'd say, over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of nefarious cowboys roll in and roll out of town. But I think what you guys have done really well is you have brought consumer confidence to a space where a lot of people are like, what the fuck am I buying? What do I do with this? Community, community, community. You know, Frank knows this from being in the music industry. Bands that would easily get signed by labels were bands that had proven that they had already created an audience, because the record label knew they had less work to do because people were already willing to buy the product. Who got into VeVe through some of the licensing properties, like a Disney or a Marvel, like something that you recognize brought you in the door? Now keep that hand up if you've bought something from an artist that you met through VeVe. See, that's the proof that that is the carrot on the stick that brings people into the space. And then once they're there, like, how did I not know who Tara McPherson or Frank Kozik or Jermaine Rogers is? And for artists like Frank and Jermaine, what I'm excited about is both of these guys learned to design within restraint of screen printing, clients, low budgets. So now that they're in a world where everything's possible, they both know that restraint is their signature style. So I'm always very excited to see how gentlemen like yourself balance that. Well, I've always been these colors within these restrictions. And how do they make the impossible possible without overdoing it? You know, like the first time I opened up Photoshop, I was like, look at all these colors. And then you go out and screen print, you're like, look at these 3 colors, right? And that's where good artwork comes from. Let's talk a little bit out of the gate. When you're getting your first licensing deals, I'm sure you got a lot of, what the fuck are we doing? But now with companies like Lamborghini literally rolling into the booth, are those deals? Yeah. And because everybody here is forward thinking and an early adopter, we just jumped right in. And there's a lot of people like my wife that are like, what the fuck are you doing? And I think that that phygital space is a really important half step.
No, it totally makes sense, because I think that short-term gain gives people a customer confidence of like, well, I'm putting up $100 today, and I walk away with this in my hand. And maybe that digital part that they don't understand yet, when they're on their phone, AKA taking a shit, they're like digging around, they're like looking at stuff, I'm like, oh, this is awesome, you know? And it's that level of exploration when you're already, you know, letting it all go anyways.
So the first thing I want to talk about today is the afterlife of an NFT, something mentioned by David. So the reason why I want to point this out is because there's always a lot of talk in the community about what can I do with these NFTs? Why can't I take them to other platforms and do other things with them? That type of stuff, right? I've mentioned it in previous episodes, but I can't stress enough The fact that the team has been thinking about this from the start. It's the reason why we have AR and the Vault feature on the app to begin with. David himself on stage was talking about his understanding of, you know, how these NFTs need to do more things than just sit in a wallet. He brings up questions like, what else are you going to be able to do with them, right? How can you interact with them? And this actually brings up some speculation that I have. So I sent a DM to Metaverse Life over on Twitter, and I asked him a quick question. I said, with regards to your VeVe 500 video, are there 3D model files for our collectibles somewhere that I'm missing, or did VeVe provide you with the models so that you could take the shots? I said, I'm trying to figure out how to animate pieces, so how did you make it all work? Now, I want to be very clear here, okay? I'm going to toss the DM up on screen. Metaverse did not tell me any information, okay? So I'm not trying to get him in trouble here. But he said, no, the models aren't anywhere for people to directly access. He said, unfortunately, I cannot discuss how I interact with the models or how I animate them at this time, other than to say lots of green screen, lots of time, lots of After Effects, and lots of energy. My first thought here was, okay, well, if he just animated them in After Effects or Blender, I don't know why he wouldn't just be able to say that. So does the team have an interactive feature planned for our collectibles that has not been turned on yet? Again, pure speculation. I cannot be more clear than that. I'm simply sharing my thought process. And the way that I think about it is that if there's something to hide, that would explain why VeVe has told him that he can't explain things at this time. I don't think that's too far of a stretch, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comment section down below. Next up, there was actually a lot of talk about doing things in phases, both from David and Rhys, but then also some other licensed artists that were actually on the panel as well, Jerome Rogers and Frank Kozik. In this conversation, you get a little bit of a different perspective, so check this out. David says that the metaverse isn't relevant to what the team was originally trying to do. We kind of already knew that. What they really wanted to focus on was the interactive features, right? So instead of getting people to go into what he refers to as the dark hole or the metaverse, they want people to go outside and use the AR feature, right? So that goes back to what David was also talking about with word of mouth, social proof, getting people involved, showing their friends, their family, posting it on socials, that type of stuff, right? He mentions that something they really want to avoid is having people enter the VeVeverse from different time zones, but then not being able to see any of their friends or it just being completely empty, right? You go into Decentraland, you go into Sandbox, it's exactly that right now. It's a ghost town. So I pointed out in my last recap video, the level of awareness that David has towards certain things. This would actually be another example of that, because he does go on to mention that he's completely aware that, you know, if something like this was to happen where somebody enters the metaverse and nobody's there, then it only really takes 3 or 4 times before somebody stops logging in and you lose that customer entirely. So he says that rolling out things in phases ensures a couple things. One, it ensures that the community understands the product properly. A lot of people got in on this product early, but at a stage where they didn't really understand what they were investing in. They heard about the Omi token, they were looking for altcoins to try and make a quick buck, they invest in a token and then find out they can't cash out, right? But then the second thing, and they mentioned this over and over again, how they continually monitor socials, the community, making sure that they understand from their side of things that they're actually delivering a product that their audience wants. Their target audience wants, should I say, okay? Not people who got in on this project without understanding the vision and now we're trying to tell them what and what they shouldn't do. Now, what I really like here is Frank Kozik actually speaks. He gives his perspective from the licensor artist side of things. And he actually talks about how VeVe rolling things out in phases actually helps him as well. So check this out.
So as a content creator for VeVe, my job is going to be to not only understand what I want to do and what maybe my collectors want, but to look at what they can provide, and then I'm going to do my artwork customized to work with their model. So as their thing gets more complex and works better and has more functionality over time, I'm going to work with them to provide assets. So like if I end up getting to have like an asset library for Labbit's Enchanted Forest, where I create all the cartoon backgrounds and all the trees and all the stuff, and then you can plug it into your room experience, then you have an option of like, you can be in like my style of world, but you, the customer, are actually designing it to make yourself happy. It's almost like I want to give you a set of Legos to play with in their metaverse. So it seems like stuff like that will be able to happen at some point. So as a content creator, that's super interesting, because it's almost like making a cartoon or a little movie or something, if you think about it in a certain way. So I'm really looking forward to that aspect of like, if you collect my brand within VeVe, at some point you'll be able to customize an entire environment for your Labbits, and then they can do stuff in there at some point. So I think it's like, it's really interesting. I actually like the incremental approach, because as a content creator, what I have to do is understandable and will follow a logical order of succession, so I can plan out something. It's a nice thing. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not just gonna be slapping like, here's an existing thing, stick it in there. Like, more and more I wanna like suit what I provide the platform to work well within the platform.
So to make a longer story short, he's pretty much talking about how he improves as VeVe improves, and I really like that. But there's one specific thing I want to point out, and it's when Kozik refers to an asset library. An asset library is exactly what I showed you guys in episode 62. When Kozik says that he's going to be creating this whole entire theme of Labbit designed accessories, what he's referring to are asset packs.
Bro, don't get it twisted. Like, if these dudes keep making it possible for me to like do freaky stuff, you know, yeah, I'm gonna do it.
That's what I'm excited though, is to see folks like yourself and Frank experiment in that space, because I know that you have the instincts to say, this fits inside of my world. And so I'm excited to see that world move and to be able to walk through it and hold up a camera and be like, whoa, this is how Jermaine would imagine this forest that I'm standing in front of, you know?
And I'll just say, that's why that VeVe-verse is so awesome, because I just think of like an area like, you know, for instance, my storylines, like an area of like the woods, where the deeper in it you go, these as a weirdness going on, you know, it's a little disturbing, but you feel comfortable there, you know, and it's just amazing. We're really in the midst of a time that's like, we're in a golden age here. It's a really good time to be doing this work.
So next up, David talks about how the IP that they've acquired for VeVe doesn't normally mix all onto one platform. He says that this is because they each believe that their property belongs to the universe that they were created for. So you have Marvel characters created for the MCU, then you have the DCU with DC Comics, so on and so forth. I do see the argument on Twitter talking about how IP isn't everything. I would agree, but it is super important. And I think in this case, it's also important to acknowledge how impressive it is for VeVe to have acquired the IP that they have so early on, right? Like, it's one thing to have the IP that they have, but to have acquired it during a time where this industry is still like in the beginning stages, and there are so many bad actors and negativity and scams and all this stuff associated with the industry. The fact that VeVe has been able to build the trust as a startup without a long history or track record is extremely impressive. So another smaller point here before we round it off with some larger discussions, but David mentions relevant assets. So he goes on to talk about how the team is never going to announce a brand or a partnership unless they feel their audience is prepared and ready for it, okay? Now, I'd assume there's a small exception here for Asian IP, right? Like Pilly Fantasy, for example. I'd actually argue that dropping Pilly Fantasy is the complete opposite of that first point. But you want to have stuff like that on the app for when the Eastern markets arrive, not after. And last but not least, guys, we're going to round it off with some video clips talking about fidgetals. So we get some more words here from Frank Kozik, but I also really want you guys to pay attention to the part where he talks about security, because going back to that point about how it's really impressive how VeVe has been able to acquire the brands they have so early on, a large part of that, in my opinion, is probably having to do with security.
And so let's talk about the idea of you guys actually making physical goods as the digital company.
You know, as we've seen across this weekend, a lot of people here probably haven't been to a DesignerCon before and maybe wouldn't have come otherwise. But through the digital platform and finding that, you know, people have flown in from Europe, people have flown in from around the country, and now we can combine that and reintroduce physical products and physical works, because that's where it all began, right? So for us, it's a really satisfying way to be able to link those products and link people to the creators.
What we call phygital, or a digital clone, where you have a physical product with a digital identity next to it, whether if it's a different color animations or a different design to really enhance that physical. And my job day to day is to ensure that we onboard companies who's in a very physical space who wants to transform and capture that digital audience?
In the short run, yes, like providing a digital match or a real life experience attached to your digital purchase, it does give people something to hang on to, right? And some of them will never quite get it, but most of them will like meet other people, and the talk will start, and the super fun collector competition starts, right? We all like to get the rare, and you'll get there. In the short run though, the phygital model is actually really great for the independent artists and even the big IP, because my experience is that I probably have 10,000 new customers on VeVe, minimum, right? Most of them had no idea that you could actually get a physical Wabbit toy or plush, or there were other artworks, they get to discover, right, stuff they may want, and I get new collectors that I had no other way to reach. That's valuable to IP and to artists, because what it does is we get an immediate short-term reward for doing a long-term commitment to VeVe's model. So it also helps us over a hump. It makes me feel real safe. It makes me want to do more. What you love originally is always going to be there. So to me, it's a win-win scenario. You win on both sides. Not only do you get faster acceptance, you get more security, but there's a short-term return. Just you get more action overall. And it's all free.
Yeah.
Like no one's paying for it, right? Having the physical item is also like a way to gather people into an actual physical space. And there's something they can touch and get signed and screw with, right? And so even though the long-term true value will not be the t-shirt, it will be the NFT, right? Or the digital collectible, or whatever we decide we want to call it.
Ladies and gents, that is going to conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. So this past week, I did promote the Fun Fact series, part 5, where we're going to be discussing fun facts about your favorite community creators. In that post, I promoted 30 creators. I'm now somewhere between 40 and 45, so I might turn it into 2 parts. I'm not 100% sure. But either way, guys, that is a video you can expect for next week. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. And as for our next, I'll catch you then.
Through the pandemic period, a lot of these users never thought they would be a creator in art way, but they all are. They created their own showroom. They publish, they upload it to their social media, and there's other people liking it. And they discover new friends and new community through that way. You guys don't even know how early you are. You guys are in extremely exceptional early stage of this transformation.